There are moments in sports that feel less like strategy and more like pure survival. This morning, the Cleveland Browns had one of those moments. Just hours before kickoff, in an unprecedented move, head coach Kevin Stefanski reportedly apologized to rookie quarterback Sanders in front of the team. Not behind closed doors, not via statement, but right there, face to face, with the entire locker room watching. "I was wrong. I should have had your back more." That's the quote being passed around everywhere. On paper, it sounds like accountability. It sounds like growth. But insiders say this wasn't some spontaneous moment of personal clarity. It was an organizational mandate forced under pressure. And at the center of it all, a quarterback controversy that's been slowly tearing the team apart for weeks. From the outside, it may look like a bold, last-minute attempt to heal fractures before going primetime. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find a storm of collapsing trust, desperate PR, internal finger-pointing, front office confusion, and a season that may already be on the brink before it even begins. This isn't just about a power struggle between a stubborn coach and a rising player. It's about the future of an entire franchise being rewritten under the spotlight, with national cameras already rolling. What happened behind the scenes that led to this sudden about-face? Why was Sanders, despite outplaying his competition, pushed aside until public pressure forced change? And most importantly, will today's so-called reconciliation actually spark a comeback? Or will it expose just how broken things really are in Cleveland? This is the story of the Browns' breaking point, and how one forced apology might determine the fate of an entire organization. Let's get into it. It wasn't just an apology, it was a performance. According to multiple insiders, Kevin Stefanski's sudden moment of humility wasn't inspired by deep reflection or personal growth. It was scheduled, scripted, and delivered under one message from the very top: fix this now. Inside the Browns facility, it didn't feel like reconciliation. It felt like damage control. The apology reportedly happened just hours after the team's most controversial story yet hit the media. Leaks suggesting that Stefanski had lost the locker room and that his relationship with Sanders had become irreparable. Following that, an emergency conference call was allegedly held by owner Jimmy Haslam with minority stakeholders, corporate sponsors, and front office leadership. The message? Resolve this before kickoff, period. By the time players arrived for morning walkthroughs, the narrative had already shifted. No more leaks, no more rumors, just one very public display of contrition. Stefanski's words were described as measured and intentional. He acknowledged that personal biases, media noise, and organizational politics clouded his judgment when evaluating the quarterback situation. He admitted he had failed to support Sanders properly. And perhaps most importantly, he did it in front of the entire roster. Witnesses said the room went silent. Some felt the tension instantly evaporate, while others were left skeptical. Was this genuine leadership, or just another Browns bandage over a deeper wound? Sanders, for his part, reportedly accepted the apology with calm professionalism, emphasizing the team's goals over any personal redemption. But inside the building, no one's mistaking this as closure. It was a ceasefire, not peace. Because here's the reality. This apology wasn't organic. It was engineered by ownership, by media pressure, by a franchise trying to hold itself together while the entire NFL world watches. And the timing? Not a coincidence. Because just days ago, this team looked ready to implode. Behind every headline, there's a decision maker. And in Cleveland, that decision maker has a name: Jimmy Haslam. The Browns owner didn't just suggest a resolution, he allegedly demanded it. Sources close to the organization claim Haslam was furious after news broke that Stefanski and Sanders were at odds again. Not just because of the internal fallout, but because the drama had become a national spectacle. By midweek, two of the top trending hashtags on Twitter were #FreeSanders and #FireStefanski. Nearly overnight, player politics turned into a branding problem. Corporate sponsors began asking questions. Season ticket holders flooded customer service lines. Even the Browns' broadcasting partners reportedly contacted the front office, concerned about the optics heading into primetime. So Haslam acted. In an emergency conference call, including minority owners and key executives, he allegedly issued a direct ultimatum. Solve this quarterback disaster before you embarrass us on national TV. No more leaks, no anonymous quotes, no public dysfunction. His franchise had become a punchline again, and it was starting to hurt the bottom line. That pressure funneled straight down the chain of command. Reports say General Manager Andrew Berry strongly urged Stefanski to publicly reconcile with Sanders, warning that the team's internal dysfunction had turned into a competitive disadvantage, not just in morale, but in preparation, performance, and perception. Executives fear the scenario where live broadcasters would spend more time dissecting locker room drama than calling plays. And in the NFL, narrative matters almost as much as the scoreboard. So the apology went forward, not as a personal milestone, but as a corporate strategy designed to stabilize a crumbling narrative. Because this was never just about football. This was about image, marketability, damage control, and at the center of all of it, a 22-year-old rookie quarterback, now forced to carry not only the offense, but the entire weight of the franchise's reputation. To understand how things exploded this morning, you have to look back, because none of this came out of nowhere. The seeds were planted weeks ago, hidden beneath layers of vague coach speak, curated press conferences, and filtered practice clips. It started in camp. 3 weeks ago, training camp insiders noticed something strange. Despite consistently outperforming Dillon Gabriel in both drills and scrimmages, Sanders was receiving fewer first-team reps. At first, it seemed like the coaching staff was easing him in, but day after day, Sanders kept making plays, while Gabriel kept getting the spotlight. 2 weeks ago, the Browns played their second preseason game. Sanders touched the field for just a handful of snaps. And yet, in that short time, he delivered what analysts called the team's most explosive series of the preseason. Still, no bump in opportunity, no press conference praise. Then things turned ugly. Last week, an anonymous leak, presumably from inside the coaching staff, labeled Sanders as immature, questioned his grasp of the playbook, and claimed his preparation wasn't where it needed to be. The story pushed through local media, framing Sanders as raw, not ready, and maybe even resistant to coaching. But teammates saw it differently. Internal reports suggest several veterans were frustrated by what they called clear favoritism toward Gabriel. Sanders himself reportedly said nothing. No accusations, no frustration publicized. Just quiet, focused preparation. Then yesterday, Cleveland insider Mary Kay Cabot dropped the bombshell that the relationship between Stefanski and Sanders had become irreparable. And then, this morning, the full reversal. So what changed? Nothing internally, based on team sources. The coaching philosophy didn't evolve. The evaluations didn't shift. What changed was the pressure from above and the realization that this storyline was headed toward a complete public implosion. This wasn't a natural evolution. It was a course correction made under duress, and it brought the whole organizational playbook into question. Because if that timeline is true, then everything fans were told might have been a cover story all along. On the surface, this looks like a coach issuing a heartfelt apology to his quarterback. But behind the scenes, that moment was the awkward climax of a mental chess match that had been building for months. From day one, Kevin Stefanski built his reputation on structure, discipline, control. In Minnesota, he was known as the silent tactician, the guy who thrived in systems, not spotlights. Then came Sanders, rookie phenom, media magnet, corporate darling, a generational athlete with charisma, confidence, and eyes on him from every possible angle. Not just fans, but sponsors, networks, ownership, even outside documentaries. To Stefanski, Sanders didn't just represent a new quarterback. He represented an existential threat to everything he'd built. Sources say the coach resisted fully buying in, not because Sanders lacked talent, but because his arrival represented a shift in power. Performance alone wasn't driving the narrative anymore. Perception was. And Stefanski wasn't ready to be sidelined in his own program. Sanders, meanwhile, played it cool. Very cool. Reports say he never lashed out, never fed into media drama, never criticized the staff, even as his reps disappeared and whispers about his maturity surfaced in the press. Where did he learn that level of control? One word: Dabrian. His father, former player, media-trained, business-savvy, and a master at playing the long game. Teammates say his influence on Sanders is crystal clear. Strategic patience, emotional discipline, and the ability to let chaos expose itself. And that's exactly what happened. While Stefanski quietly spiraled behind the curtain, calling old coaching mentors for advice, some reportedly telling him to protect his job, not his ego, Sanders stayed locked in, already expecting resistance, already prepared for a long battle. But even he didn't see the apology coming, because Sanders wasn't preparing for a handshake. He was preparing for a season-long war, one snap at a time. And now, both men are locked in a fragile alliance, one built on public peace, but fueled by private suspicion. From the outside, it looked like a breakthrough. Coach apologizes, quarterback accepts, team unites, end of story, right? Not even close. Inside the locker room, the reaction to that apology was far from unanimous. Yes, some players clapped, others nodded. But a significant segment of the roster just looked at each other, not with relief, but with skepticism. Because for them, this wasn't just about Sanders versus Gabriel. This was about trust being broken, lines being crossed, and accountability arriving only when embarrassment hit the national stage. Take Joel Bitonio, Cleveland's longest tenured player. Sources say he privately expressed frustration over what he called a circus atmosphere surrounding the quarterback situation. A guy who's given over a decade to the franchise, now caught in side plots that feel more reality TV than football. Then there's Nick Chubb, quiet leader, all business. Reports say he pulled Sanders aside that morning and offered full, unshaken support. No speeches, no drama, just a nod, a handshake, and one message: we ride together. Even on defense, the locker room split was showing. Myles Garrett, team captain, tone setter, reportedly gathered the unit after walkthrough and urged one thing: ignore the noise. Stay focused. We can't let this drama derail the season. But here's the problem. The drama's not just outside the building anymore. It's part of the foundation now. Assistant coaches are quietly whispering about what the apology means for precedent. Does this signal that ownership will override coaching decisions anytime a player gets hot online? Position coaches are now scrambling to adjust development plans after spending weeks installing systems built around Gabriel. And behind all of it is the sense that this wasn't a unifying moment. It was a public reset loaded with private uncertainty. On paper, the locker room is moving forward, but inside, the tension didn't vanish. It just changed shape. By the time most fans were grabbing morning coffee, the Browns were already doing something most NFL teams would consider unthinkable. They were rewriting the game plan, not tweaking it, not adjusting it, completely overhauling it from top to bottom. Just hours before a divisional showdown against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt was reportedly seen scribbling changes on a whiteboard as players walked in. Formation packages built around Dylan Gabriel's pocket passing style? Scrapped. Shotgun play charts designed for timing and rhythm? Torn out. By 9 a.m., the focus had shifted entirely to unpolished but undeniably electric Sanders. That meant designed QB runs, bootlegs, off-schedule passing plays, and deep shots off play action. That also meant the offensive line had to relearn protection calls and adjust for a QB who moves, improvises, extends plays. The exact opposite of what they were prepped for all month. One assistant coach reportedly said, "We're building a game plan at halftime tempo, and the game hasn't even started yet." Receivers were instructed to extend routes. Running backs to expect more lateral movement. Tight ends to stay ready for emergency bailouts. It was controlled chaos, but chaos all the same. Even the analytics department was pulled in, adjusting models, recalculating success probabilities, and preparing scenario cut-ups from Sanders' limited preseason tape. Anything they could get into players' hands before kickoff. Special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone was reportedly frustrated with the distraction, warning that any mental slippage could cost field position scraps, the kind that swing divisional games. And yet, despite the madness, one thing kept echoing throughout the building. If anyone can pull this off, it's him. Sanders' raw ability gives the Browns a fighting chance. But the team isn't just playing the Bengals tonight. They're fighting the clock, the playbook, and themselves. This controversy isn't just shaking locker room walls, it's rattling boardrooms, broadcast booths, and balance sheets. For the Cleveland Browns, this morning's apology wasn't just about aligning the quarterback room. It was about saving a brand. Sources say corporate partners were already voicing concerns after weeks of messy headlines. When #FreeSanders started trending, it wasn't just fans stirring the pot. It was a crisis for sponsors tied to the team's image. Multiple internal emails reportedly flagged the quarterback controversy as a high-risk optics issue leading into Sunday's national broadcast. And this is no ordinary game. It's prime time, divisional, and internally framed as a tone setter for the year. The last thing executives wanted was the conversation to focus on backroom dysfunction instead of football execution. So ownership took matters into its own hands, forcing the reconciliation and hoping to turn chaos into content. And in a way, it's working. Merchandise sales reportedly spiked overnight. Social media engagement is breaking franchise records, and ESPN and Fox both scrambled to adjust their pregame coverage, spotlighting the Sanders-Stefanski reconciliation as a major storyline. But there's a cost. Television networks are watching closely. So are advertisers. And season ticket holders who nearly pulled the plug are suddenly back on the fence, waiting to see if this team can prove it's more than just a headline machine and shoulder pads. Even stadium naming rights negotiators, yes, those deals are ongoing, are reportedly monitoring how the Browns handle this very public mess. The playbook changed. The narrative shifted. But for Sanders, none of that changes the bottom line. He has to deliver. Tonight, right now. Because no matter how dramatic the apology was or how publicly the team moved forward, validation in the NFL doesn't come through words. It comes through execution. The locker room is watching. So is the front office. And maybe most of all, the fans, who've endured false starts, wasted drafts, and never-ending quarterback turnovers for over 2 decades. Sanders isn't just stepping into a huddle, he's stepping into a firestorm. There's no cushion here, no brace period. He's operating on shortened install, rushed chemistry, and real-time adjustments against a Bengals defense that's built to destroy inexperience. Cincinnati defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo has a history of confusing young quarterbacks. And make no mistake, he's been watching the Browns' chaos and planning all week. Blitz packages, rotating coverages, delayed pressures, Everything in his arsenal will be used to throw Sanders off balance. But here's the twist. This might be exactly what Sanders thrives on. Sources say he's fueled by adversity, never more laser-focused than when he's doubted or under pressure. His teammates describe him as calm under chaos, the kind of guy who turns broken plays into highlight reels. Make no mistake though, tonight isn't about style points. It's about proving he's more than just a media darling. That all the hype, all the public support, it can translate into actual wins, into trust, into leadership. If he flames out, this explodes all over again. If he shines, he doesn't just earn the job, he shifts the franchise's entire trajectory. The stage is set, the cameras are rolling, and now everything rides on one player. A 22-year-old rookie with the weight of Cleveland on his shoulders. So now we've reached the breaking point. The dust from the apology has barely settled. The playbook has been flipped upside down, and Sanders is walking into the spotlight, not just as a quarterback, but as the face of an organizational gamble. But here's the brutal reality. An apology means nothing if the performance doesn't follow. This isn't college. This isn't preseason. And this definitely isn't an environment that tolerates excuses. The Browns have essentially bet the future on one player and one very public moment of reconciliation. But was it real? That's the question echoing through every hallway in the Browns facility. Did Stefanski's apology come from true growth and reflection? Or was it just a desperate attempt to hang on to power with the cameras rolling? And what happens if this fragile piece doesn't hold? What if the offense sputters? What if Sanders makes rookie mistakes and the fiery headlines return by halftime? There is no middle ground anymore. Either tonight becomes the first step toward a real transformation, or it becomes another chapter in a franchise defined by drama, dysfunction, and broken promises. Ownership wants vindication. The media wants a storyline. The fan base just wants this team to finally stop getting in its own way. And for Stefanski and Sanders, this game may define their professional futures. If Sanders performs, he doesn't just earn the starting job. He erases the doubt, justifies the chaos, and could even revive a crumbling locker room. But if he struggles, they'll say it was too soon, too forced, too Cleveland. So now, only one thing matters: the scoreboard. Because debates are loud, leaks are messy, and optics can lie. But performance? Performance never does. This is more than a football game. This is a franchise trying to decide whether it's entering a new era or proving it hasn't changed at all.